I'm Dante, and this is Dante Dakara. Welcome back to the channel. I'm a teacher, expat vet, based out of Tokyo, Japan, and my channel is dedicated to stories. There are stories everywhere, and I'm appreciative of you being a part of mine. Usually, I do, teacher videos and visual stories and diaries, rather, about, my daily life and kind of the soliloquy that's going on in my head. What I don't do anymore is responses. Well, I didn't really do it. I had like a feud with another YouTuber, and we did kind of a back and forth, which was a learning experience for me because I kind of made an ass of myself, just being overly emotional and petty, which is always good to, like, in hindsight, to be able to analyze yourself, but yeah, not one of my shining moments. However, I still believe in some of the things that I was saying, just not how I said it. That being said, I did want to do an analysis of a video that I saw, and so if you'll permit me, I'm going to do some analysis. That being said, I don't green screen, and I don't use other people's videos in my videos, just because I feel like, that crosses a line that I just don't want to cross. So I'll put a link to the video below. But the video I'm responding to is not bad. It's just, I thought it was interesting, and I don't usually watch other YouTubers in Japan because I feel like it would kind of influence my content, and I don't want to make content for content's sake. I want to make content that tells a story. So I don't usually watch other Japanese YouTubers. It's just a thing I just don't do. However, I like to watch YouTubers tell stories that I can't tell. And Takashii from Japan, he usually does interview videos about while talking to other Japanese people. There's a few YouTubers out there like that, as a matter of fact. There's Sharon, who I worked with before. He's a really great guy, great YouTuber. I'll link him below as well. And then there's this guy who I like watching because all of his interviews are generally done in Japanese. He talks to mostly Japanese people of all age ranges, so there's no real skew to his channel. As some channels, they usually have like kind of a young people or a foreign skew because that's their audience. And while foreign people are his audience, he doesn't talk about just foreign related things. And he doesn't just talk to people who like foreign things. So I thought this particular video was interesting. Now getting into it, sorry for the opening spiel. His video was about things that Japanese people hate about Japan. And I thought this was really interesting because I can take from it, or I can show you how these ideas kind of grow from the school system, and how, and my observations of some of the things that they said based on my foreign perspective, having traveled around the world, having now been in Japan and seeing things here, and comparing and contrasting to some different things that I've seen. So one of the things that was said, and I'm going to be referencing my handy dandy tablet here, so that's why I'm looking down, that it feels freer in other countries. People feel freer in other countries, one of the people said on there. And this derives from Japan being, generally speaking, a closed society. And for some people, especially conservatives, which I lampooned in another video, that's really good for some people. It feels safe. But oftentimes there is kind of this trade-off, like with freedom and safety. The less free you are, maybe the safer you are, but the more you feel closed in. And so he referenced safety and free, excuse me, he referenced freedom in other countries and diversity, which jumps into another topic that somebody said was just other environments seem happier. And thinking as a teacher, like, there's kind of this thing that happens between first year in junior high school and second and third year in junior high school, and you kind of see a personality shift, and it shifts into what's normal society feel, what normal society feels like, where the room is colder, where it feels more constrained. And students realize it, and I identified it. I'm like, hey guys, do you notice you guys are quieter now? You're more concerned about what other people think about you now than you were your first year. Why? And they kind of look around and they kind of shrug, like, I don't know. I don't know why I feel this way. And someone brought it up on the video. It's because everybody's watching you now. Like, or rather, you notice that everyone's watching you now. And I like to call this like the age of awareness, like, or the age of consciousness. The moment that you become conscious of society in a meta fashion, the moment that you become aware of your part in society. And I realized that when I was 5 years old, exactly what that was. And my jarring moment was something more personal. It was the moment that, I remember meeting my mom after, so many years, like, or rather it's my first memory of my mother after so many years of living with my grandmother. Like, that moment that kind of jarred me into realizing that the world is much bigger than my grandmother's home, and that society was a great big world that scared me. And I was learning so young how to move through that world. Well, my students are now in that moment where they see society as a whole, and they're like, everyone's looking at me. I can't embarrass myself. And that everyone looking is safe, but it also closes you in. And so one of the interviewees was saying that society feels freer in other places, more diverse in other places, and it feels happier. And so much is made about safety in Japan, and I know a lot of J-vloggers like to talk about how Japan is this safe, cloistered, group-centric place. And we'll talk about the group-centric thing at the end, but it's really important to understand that silence does not mean agreement. It just means tolerance. And it's something that, safety is something that's valued, but there is a cost for that safety. There's a cost for that freedom. And the lack of diversity, while is great for continuity and to keep that safety and to keep that quote unquote, group mentality, there is a trade-off for that, and every person has to make the individual decision whether or not that trade-off is worth it. This particular individual said that he wants to leave the country. He wants to go back abroad for a little bit. It doesn't mean he's going to stay abroad forever, but it means that he felt that being abroad would be better for him than being here, and there's nothing wrong with that. One of the other big ones that I really keyed in on was suicide issues, and it's my greatest fear as a teacher that one of my students in the future will commit suicide. Literally, I've had nightmares about it. It scares me so much that my final speech to my students is telling them that no matter where you go, no matter where you are, no matter like what time of day it is, no matter what you're doing, you can always contact me anytime. I do not care. And the reason for that is the death of a student, to me, is a nightmare that I never want to live. And some of my colleagues have lived it. And I would just die inside. And we'll talk more about my kind of emotional issues with this kind of thing at a later date. But I would just die. And so the idea of suicide being such a youth-centric issue always keys with me. Like, why is this a thing? And their own analysis was the fact that there's so much stress, and I see it. In my previous video, we were talking about work-life balance, and you can see the stress on children at such a young age, and it's the independence. And it's not true independence because everyone's watching, back to the other point, but it feels truly independent. It feels like existential stress every day. Why? Because your future depends on this. Your future depends on this. What high school you go to determines what college you go to. What college you go to determines what company you get into. What company you get into determines how much money you're going to make for the rest of your life, and your life's over. You're thinking about this at 12, 13, 14. That's, that I love how independent my students are. I love how I can talk to them like they're like real people, but I hate that stress for them. Like, I hate that for them. Like, it creates a great workforce and it creates a well-working society, but it also creates the environment for which students want to kill themselves. And I don't like that. So there has to be some kind of balance, and there was no real solution in the video for it, but just talking about analyzing society and analyzing, the stress that people are under. But he said one really interesting thing that, like one of the interviews, he said one really interesting thing, and I wanted to key on this too, for those of you who study Japan, and that's that Japan has no national religion, or has no real religious foundation. Now, don't get it twisted. There is a religion here, and there is like a belief system and a spiritual system here. Heck, there are shrines and temples everywhere you look. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that that is something that grounds or is a foundation for your life, which is an interesting point to make. While there are so many holidays and traditions based on spiritualism, that doesn't mean the direction of your life is based on that, or the grounding of your moral fabric is based on that. Tradition isn't religion. And for some people, that would be a difficult distinction to make. But again, tradition isn't religion. So he was saying that maybe, like looking at other societies where, for example, in Christian society, suicide is a sin, and direction for one's life is given to you by the book. Same thing with Islam, same thing with Judaism. Like, direction is given to you through the book. Quran, Torah, the Bible. And so without that kind of direction, people kind of roam aimlessly, or they're able to be stressed. It's an interesting thing. I really want to key in on one more point, and that is that it's colder. And I thought that was the biggest point that was made, like that Japan can feel cold. And I'm pulling my jacket like I'm cold. But, one of the things that I think is really interesting is that my students are so warm. And, we're always together, and we're laughing, and we're enjoying class, and we're enjoying life. And then they graduate, and I see them walking, and we'll wave for a few years. And then, I'll see them, and then they'll be kind of, looking down, and I won't bother them. But something happens where they feel like, the world is a little bit colder place, where they're not as warm as they used to be. Like, seriousness has made them cold. And I think that it's a lack of understanding that you can be serious and not be cold. That you can laugh about the things that are going on in life, and still take life seriously. There's a guy who's wearing this funny shirt, and he was like, yo, I wear this shirt because I want people to think I'm funny, but they just look at me like I'm crazy. And he's Japanese. These aren't American people. These aren't teenagers saying these things. These are working adults who are saying these things that they see about Japan. So I get really annoyed when I hear other people complain about, Japanese people don't want to change their society, or this is the perfect society. I hear that usually from gaijin, or for foreigners, oh, this is the perfect society, it's the best society in the world. To you, from your perspective, but there are plenty of Japanese people who have problems with the things that they see in their own society. And it's not to say that they should change them, or that they're going to change them, but it's that, we all are dealing with these things in our world that we don't necessarily like. And it goes back to my paradise video that be careful about the level of esteem that you put on something. Other people can hate it, and they can also find you to be quite weird, and honestly, weird is the only word I can find for it. To hold a place in such esteem where they can see behind the scenes what's wrong with it. I think, that's the balance that we should probably take, and that's understanding that Japan is a great place for a bunch of good reasons, but understanding the cost of Japan being a good place. And these Japanese people in this interview did a great job of explaining why they think those situations exist, or the things that they don't like in these situations. And then this is just my analysis of why they exist. But as far as teaching is concerned, and I'll put a bow on it with this, I think that as a teacher, both like thinking from like putting my like foreigner hat on and putting my like separate, and I really do think it's separate, like, you know, full-blown teacher hat on. And that's, you know, my job is to prepare students for Japanese society, to, you know, work in harmony and be successful in the world that they select, whether it be Japanese society only or the greater global society. But that also means that they have to survive. So, you know, what has worked for Japanese society, like, it stays. Like, there hasn't been too much change in the curriculum for Japanese society. You know, we've had bullying and work-life balance and cut back on some things. But generally speaking, things are about the same. But because of that, the problems are about the same. And there has to be a balance. And I always talk to my Japanese colleagues about, you know, this is in the textbook. This is in the English textbook. Hey, you know, we're going to talk about global warming. Or we're going to talk about poverty. This is great. We're going to talk about poverty. And the idea of poverty is always a foreign topic. And I always ask students, is there any poverty in Japan? And students are like, and I'm like, yo, have you ever been to the zoo? Ueno Zoo? And so it's like, oh, yeah. I was like, oh, okay. You seen any people living on the streets there? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, have you ever been to Yoyogi Park? I'm like, oh, yeah, I've been. You seen homeless people living around there? Like, yeah. I was like, so, again, is poverty only a foreign issue? And they're like, no, it's not. And I'm like, yeah. Like, as much as we should love our own countries, wherever we're respectively from, we should always seek to improve upon the things that we can improve on and leave what's already working. And I think my job as a teacher is to give them the tools to look at society as a whole, not to change it, but to ask questions and let them come up with the answers. Or for them to ask me questions and me to throw those questions back at them because I'm not supposed to answer them because some topics are taboo in the classroom. But I think that I really take that role seriously because I think that this is the students' world. It's not my world. It's theirs. Like, and I don't mean like it's Japanese or it's Japan, so it's a Japanese world. No, I mean, I'm 35. Like, yeah, like I'm in my prime, I think. I think I'm in my prime. I'm in my prime. But it's not my world. It's theirs. I am trying to teach them to make this world better because I don't believe that in my lifetime it's gonna be a great world. I just don't. So it's not about Japan for me. It's about the world. But Japan is their world, so they need to figure out what they're going to do for Japan so that they don't have as many of these complaints as the people had on this YouTube channel over here. You can actually see it's YouTube over there. Anyway, what do you think about this? Like, I'm really interested to hear what you think about my analysis of what's going on. I kind of was long-winded, but I think that this was a really interesting topic that I wanted to go into. If you like this kind of analysis video, I'm sorry that I'm not going to do it more often. It's just I can't commit to doing this kind of thing, and honestly it makes me uncomfortable to talk about other people's videos because I really into my own place and into my own content, but like I think everyone should analyze the people that you are living with, that you're working around, and I think this was a good way for me to do that. And I've done it. I feel good. I feel prepared, and I feel like I want to talk about something else. So let me know what you think below. Let me know what you think about this analysis, and I'll see you guys maybe in a week, definitely in a week, where we will be giving you a visual diary. Anyway, I'm Dante. This is Dante Dakada. Until next time, later.